Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the February 2016 Council meeting of the Media Borough Council. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, welcome. I apologize. I've got a pair of power glasses, and if they stay on my nose tonight, it's in defiance of gravity. But before we begin, a special thank you to all of the borough staff, including the highway crew, the sanitation crew, for the work that they've done over the past few weeks. We had a tremendous snowfall, yet things went fairly smoothly here in the borough. So a great shout out to them. Jeff, I'm sure you've already thanked them, and I'm sure that Vice President Robinson will have a few words to say either now or during his portion of the agenda.
And since you started, I mean, yes, I think we all recognize how great our highway department served the residents and the businesses during that significant storm that we had. And I also think it's very important that we recognize and thank, our fire department, our EMS group. They were out. I saw their trucks going up and down when it was not the easiest or the most passable roads. And our police department for the stellar job. I will say the police are very happy that they're now driving four-wheel drive vehicles as their main police vehicles and not trying to drive a rear two-wheel drive vehicle in the storms that we've had. So, again, these are the times that we should be very proud of the employees that we have. They came out. It was a horrible snow. Put together a good plan for both our residents as well as our business district. For those that may not be aware, we came in with backhoes and special dump trucks and got the snow off of State Street and Front Street to make sure that our business district was passable. And very pleasant. I've heard numerous people, businesses and residents, say what a great job that they did. So again, as President Hall said, a big shout out to everybody, including the borough staff that puts up with the phone calls to the people that expect the snow to be gone 12 minutes after the snow stops. We do have some of those residents. I think they do need to recognize that when it snows, there's only so many places that one can put the snow, and we do our very best to open up the streets the best as possible. So again, President Hall said, big shout out to the whole gang. Thank you.
All right, so let's move into a couple of housekeeping matters. We have two sets of meeting minutes. We have the meeting minutes from our January workshop. Do I hear a motion to approve the January 7, 2006 workshop meeting minutes as submitted?
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
There is a motion and a second on the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those who favor approving the workshop meeting minutes from January 7, 2016 as submitted, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes. And then similarly, we have a set of meeting minutes from our January council meeting that occurred on January 21. Do I hear a motion to approve that set of meeting minutes as submitted?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the council meeting minutes from January 21, 2016 as submitted, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes. Before we get into public comment and privilege of the floor, it is my duty to announce that we did hold executive session on a number of items this a couple of weeks ago. Those items including a litigation matter involving the proposed Wawa, a litigation matter involving a property located at 307 South Avenue concerning the status of that property. There was a property matter concerning the lease of borough property to the Sunoco Gas Company regarding a pipeline, and we did discuss some matters involving personnel over the past week. All right, so that having taken care of the housekeeping matters, we'll move on to public comment and privilege of the floor. If there's anyone here who wishes to address council at this time, please come to the microphone, state your name and where you live, and then fire away.
Letitia Jevons, 216 North Monroe Street. My question is vaguely, as you alluded to the winter storm, which delayed me from getting back into town from visiting family elsewhere, mainly due to the fact what used to be the R3, the media element line, nothing was running out of 30th Street. So, but I talked to some business people afterwards who said they were closed for part of that weekend due to weather. And I know it sounds like you had to put in some overtime possibly on borough employees. Is there, and I'm aware that not all the consequences of the storm will necessarily pop up 5 minutes later, that a truck could rust out and you could discover it was the salt you used in May or June or something. But do we have any sort of estimate on costs, both in terms of the business authority and lost revenue, or in terms of overtime and other costs to the borough, overtime or road salt or any of that?
With regards to businesses that were closed, that would be on the business themselves. We did not, I mean, even though there was a state of emergency declared within the borough, there was no requirement for a business to close. And there were certain establishments that no matter what stay open, and those establishments were open. Other businesses in which I spoke to myself with regards to closing, they felt that it was in their best interest and the best interest of their employees to be closed. We did encounter overtime, as we do with any of the storms. Mr. Smith may have those numbers. We also did, Public Safety and Public Works Committee did authorize the bringing in of a private contractor with regards to the backhoe and some of the dump trucks, and I believe that cost came to about $15,000. But what I can say right now is we are still well within budget. Knock on wood, you know, we had a very pleasant December and November, so where we would normally anticipate some other snows, we did not have them. I don't know if you have the exact dollar amount, Mr. Smith, with regards to staff or, excuse me, Highway Department overtime?
Yeah, it's approximately $29,100. As the Vice President mentioned, the contractor that council brought in was approximately $14,100. The highway overtime, it was a weekend storm, so per their collective bargaining agreement, they're compensated at double time on Sunday, so that was about $14,500. And then lastly, there was some meals, again per their collective bargaining agreement. Each time they're out for a certain period of time, they're entitled to what they call a meal allowance. So if you add all those three figures up, it's about $29,100 for that storm.
All right, so even some bad weather has consequences beyond those that we see immediately. Does anybody else wish to address council at this time? If so, please come to the microphone. If not, we will move along to Mr. Johnson, the Borough Engineer.
Thank you.
Moving along then.
Thank you and good evening. Short report for January 2016. Attended 2 meetings, council workshop, legislative. Also participated in conference calls, emails, and discussions, property maintenance for 307 South, subdivision and land development, West End Walk, prepared and transmitted a final review letter dated January 12th, West End Flats, various communications with PennDOT began, Higgins Electric for the traffic signal equipment for the proposed new signal at Brook, Baltimore, and State. That is the summary for January 8th.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Johnson? Otherwise, we'll move along to Mr. Scott.
Thank you.
Mr. Scott.
Thank you. I don't have anything to report tonight.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Scott? Hearing none, we'll move along to the mayor.
Thank you. The police department handled a total of 702 complaints during last month, and no burglaries were reported during the month of January. The chief actually had a note here too about the work of the department on the snow. He said, first and foremost, big shout out to the Public Works Department. Best job he's seen in his 37 years here on a day. And I guess the second most was in 1996 when we had
26.
about that. Just to note, because I see Larry Bach here, Larry is still putting together, developing a communication system through Delco Alert for the restaurants, for several entities in town. So
For everybody.
for everybody. So there'll be a lot of new communications this year. That's all. That's it. 911 and lock your doors.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Does anyone have any questions for the mayor? Hearing none, we'll move then into our council committee reports. We will go from my right to my left. Recreation Board of Health, Mr. Borough.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everyone. I just have a few quick announcements from the February rec meeting. At the end of this month, Friday, February 26th, is the annual family dance. Silly Joe is the entertainment. It is from 6 to 9 that evening. You can buy tickets at the door. Generally, there's pizza, salad, and a lot of fun for especially younger kids. So it's a fun night out, especially in the winter. There are tickets still available for the flower show, which is March 5th through the 13th. They're available at $20 each. You can get them from Paula in the rec office as well. At the end of March will be the Easter egg hunt / lunch with the Easter Bunny. That is the day before Easter on Saturday, March the 26th, from 11 until 1:30. And there will be a puppet show. That's a new thing. They, I think, introduced that at the Christmas show, and the kids seem to enjoy that as well. In the distant future, and they're booking these now because there are, I guess, there are only so many Sundays when it runs, but Spirit of Philadelphia Cruise, which the Rec Commission runs every year, is on Sunday, October the 9th. The price will be $50. That includes the bus from Media to Philadelphia and also a lunch on the Spirit of Philadelphia. And that is my report.
Thank you, Kevin. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Boyer? Hearing none, we'll move along to Councilwoman Lisa Johnson, Historic Archives Review Board, the Media Business Authority, and Historic.
Thank you. The Historic Society did not meet this month, so I have nothing to report. HARB, the Historic Architectural Review Board, met, but I have nothing to report. The NBA does have some announcements that I'd like to share with you. First of all, the Media Easter egg hunt is Saturday, March 19th at 11 a.m. at Glen Providence Park. And also the Media Rotaries Club Pancake Breakfast is also March 19th from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. at the Media Elementary School. On Saturday, April 9th is the Americana Roots Ramble, and it's sponsored by the Media Business Authority. There's a whole list of venues listed here, probably 25 maybe, I'm guessing. The adult tickets are in advance are $15, and on the day of the shows, $20. Seniors and veterans have a discounted price of $15 on the day of the show, again, April 9th. And the proceeds benefit Media Fire Company and Media Green Up Cleanup programs. So consider doing that. It's 21 indoor stages from 6 p.m. to 1:15 a.m. You don't have to stay up that late. And the fourth item, the NBA is proud to present Shamika Copeland. She's the nationally recognized and Grammy-nominated talent. She'll be at the Media Theater for this year's Blues Stroll, which is in June. So take note of that. There'll be special tickets sold specifically for this event. You can contact the Media Business Authority's office for details. That's all I have. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Lisa. Does anyone have any questions for Councilwoman Johnson, Lisa Johnson? Hearing none, we'll move on to Properties, Public Works, Public Safety, and Fire. Vice President Robinson.
Good evening, and first and foremost, I apologize for having the longest agenda. It's not my fault, I promise you. I'll start off with just some notes. As I always do each month, I want to encourage our residents and residents of communities that use the Media Fire Company and EMS to consider volunteering their time. Volunteering their time for either being a firefighter, EMS, or even serving in the administrative side of the fire company. So would appreciate that. Number two, on just some notices, I have had a couple of meetings with residents, mainly in the eastern precinct, with concerns of traffic, quote-unquote speeding, and or the typical rolling through our stop signs. I have spoken with the mayor, and the chief are in the process right now of, I'm going to say, ramping up our enforcement, not just in eastern precinct, but everywhere within the borough. I do want to remind people that under borough code, the maximum speed is that of 25 miles an hour, and the word stop really does mean stop. And what I very often hear, which is becoming somewhat frustrating, is it seems like many of our residents actually want to blame the quote outside of the person that doesn't live here. But what I want to say is I often, while walking in the evenings, is when I get frustrated, because that's when I do see the car that's going faster than 25, when I do see the car that doesn't bother stopping at stop signs, and then I see that same car pulling over a block or two down and parking in front of their house immediately. So as much as we want to blame the outsiders, many of these issues are ours. And I think we need to take it seriously and start to recognize that we have stop signs and we have speed limits for a reason, and I'm asking everyone to adhere to them, because I think it is time that we advise our police department that when we pull someone over and we say, hey, you need to start to slow down, or hey, you need to stop, those days are over with, and we'll start to be giving tickets. It's something that we don't like to do. We are everybody's hometown, but if it's everybody's hometown, then everybody has to obey the laws within the town. Trying to see. I also reminded the Borough Council that we are going to be fortunate to be the hosts of the Southeastern Pennsylvania Municipal League Regional Dinner, which will be April 4th. There will be meetings here at Borough Hall. I want to say probably 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon. They haven't been quite defined yet. And then we will be having a dinner at Spazo's. Pennsylvania Municipal League represents anywhere from the city of Philadelphia. The past president of the Pennsylvania Municipal League was Mayor Nutter. Other cities and towns that we might recognize in the area is the city of Allentown, Bethlehem. More local municipalities that are involved are Westchester Borough, Downtown Borough, of course, media. I would encourage all of us to attend. I think you'll find it very interesting, and it'll give us an opportunity to talk to other crazy people like us that decide to serve their community. So I would encourage you all to come out with that. With that, we'll move into the legislative part of my agenda, and number one is to authorize entering into a contract with the Pennsylvania Department of General Services for road salt. This is an annual, I don't want to say requirement, but this goes to an organization which we call as Co-Stars. Normally, and correct me, Jeff, we normally start out with about 250 tons of salt. With this agreement, if we have a bad winter, we're automatically able to get 75% of that. So pretty good. A renewal of another 75% of that 250 tons. So I'll make a motion that we enter into an agreement with Pennsylvania Department of General Services for our road salt agreement for the 2016-17 year.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving that agreement for the years 2016 and 17, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
Next on my agenda is Resolution 2016-11. It's an application for county aid. Really what this is our request to the county for our allocation of liquid fuels tax, which comes from when we put gas in our cars, and the taxes on that. A portion of that comes back to the county. Then the county divvies it up to the municipalities within the county. So we're requesting a $25,000. Those funds would be and are required under the code to be used for such areas for road resurfacing. So this would be used for milling and road resurfacing on various streets within the borough.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving resolution or passing resolution 2016-11, please say aye.
Yes.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
Next on the agenda, and as we were just discussing with the cost of our storm, the mayor, with his brilliant decision of declaring the borough a state of emergency, will allow us to request state aid for the emergency. So in essence, that is exactly what resolution 2016-12 is a resolution requesting some reimbursements from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania for the expenses in which occurred for the storm. So I make a motion that we approve resolution 2016-12 declaring a state of emergency for the winter storm. Jonas, I didn't know that it had a name to it, so
Second.
for the winter storm, thank you.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving resolution 2016-12, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
Next on the agenda is authorizing the advertisement for bids for our 2016 road resurfacing. We're doing this earlier and earlier each year to ensure that we can get our RFPs out, get responses in a timely manner so that we can start the road resurfacing projects in the summer months instead of for a couple of years we're kind of being held off to the later part of the year in which we start to get concerned with regards to cool evenings and the way the asphalt would adhere. So make a motion we authorize our manager and solicitor to do the advertisement required for the 2016 road resurfacing.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of authorizing the advertisement of bids for the 2016 road resurfacing program, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
Next on my agenda is to look into or consider extending the license agreement that we currently have with SEPTA with regards to our public safety cameras on State Street. I believe that this is not a significant item, but it's my understanding that Bob, you really haven't had a good opportunity to take a look at the agreement.
Well, I did today, actually, and it's the same agreement we have now. The only difference is the term will be extended for 5 years, and at the conclusion of 5 years, it becomes month to month.
Okay.
So either party can terminate on 30 days notice after 5 years.
So you're happy with it?
Yes,
So, all right.
yeah, it's fine.
Then I was originally going to ask the solicitor to review that, but it seems like he's been able to get the time today. So I'll make a motion that we enter into extending the license agreement with SEPTA with regards to having our public safety cameras placed on their poles on State Street, excuse me.
Motion's been made, has been seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of entering into an agreement to extend, all those in favor of extending our license agreement with SEPTA so that the public safety cameras can remain on the SEPTA poles for the next 5 years, please say aye.
Yes.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
Next on the agenda is for the Borough Council to consider entering into an agreement with a third-party electric supplier. This is something I find very interesting and pleasant to announce this evening. With the great assistance of Karen Tussock-Lux, our grant writer, she has been working with a firm by the name of Constellation, who has been selected actually as in an alliance program with the Pennsylvania Municipal League. With this, we were able to get significantly cheaper pricing with regards to our electric requirements, and there were actually 2 options that were available. One would be an 18% savings on our electric bill over 4 years. But the other one, I think, which is even more important to us in the borough, is there is the opportunity that we could purchase 100% of renewable energy through this program, and over a course of 4 years, have a cost savings of close to $90,000. So this to me is a win-win where we're able to save a significant amount of money and also be able to say that the borough is using 100% renewable or green energy. So with that, I'd make a motion that we enter into the agreement pending final review by our solicitor's office with regards to the agreement with Constellation for providing electric to the borough of Media.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Yes.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
And to add a little bit on to that, it is our hopes, we've had discussions with Karen and with Jeff Smith and other members of Borough Council, that with the savings which we may be getting will be getting with the use of Constellation, we are now looking into definitely the possibility of getting rid of our existing overhead street lights and replacing them with LED. With the savings from the contract with Constellation, we're thinking could be actually probably close to 50% of the cost that it would be for the borough to replace the lights for and changing them over to LED. With that, the borough then would have another significant cost savings and a reduction of use of electricity with LED. The other advantage of LED is they actually, I'm learning this as you know on the training, is they basically come in blocks, and each light is usually like 4 blocks. So if a light is too bright, we can actually take a block out, dim it a little bit, but then we also have the ability to use that block in another light later on if we so need it. So this is I think exciting. We're finding ways that we can have renewable green energy and also have a significant savings to the borough. So hopefully that'll be moving on with that. What would my agenda be without mass gathering permits? I'm not quite sure, but so here goes the start of the mass gathering. Oh, I'm sorry. There was a motion in it. No, we entered in that, didn't we? With Constellation.
That's 4 today.
I'm working off of the one from yesterday at 4 o'clock. I didn't know it changed it yet. Okay, I'm sorry, yes. Resolution 2016-13. I did not see this one. Authorizing the application to the 2015 Pico Green Region Open Space Program for the Hooten Park project. Mr. Smith, I will have to defer to you on that one.
Sure. Karen, our grants administrator, had mentioned that there's an opportunity through the Pico Green Region program to purchase some signage. It's referred to interpretive environmental signs that we could put down at Hooten Park related to a stream corridor as well as woodlands. So it's an informational type signage. So the grant that Karen's talking about does require council to approve a resolution authorizing its submission, and the cost that Karen estimates is anywhere between $600 to a maximum of $1,200 for the sign. So that's essentially the request. Vice President Robinson is correct. It was one of those last-minute items that Karen had made us aware of, and the deadline is rapidly approaching. So Karen is asking if it's something the council, I'm sorry, the deadline's March 1st, so that's essentially a summary of it at this point.
And I'll make a motion that we approve Resolution 2016-13.
Second.
There is a second. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Just one thing, Mr. President, I'm going to recuse myself because my employer is the administrator of this grant program.
I think that means that you have to fill out a form at some point. We appreciate that you're being forthcoming. All right, unless there are any other reasons to recuse, then I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving Resolution 2016-13, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
Okay, with regards to mass gathering permits, first one on the agenda is for, let me make sure I have these right, for the Spring Super Sunday, which will be Sunday, May 17th, 2016. April 17th, 2016, from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. This is an event that's been going on for several years. I will suggest that we amend our normal application at the request of public safety and mainly the mayor, that with the events of this size, that the event now have 2 police officers in attendance. Correct, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess I would also ask, because in conversations that we've had, Brian, that there's concerns that you've addressed with regards to making sure everything is equal. We have normally required the town talk to have an events coordinator, where other events within the borough were not required. I'm not sure if you would want to no longer require an events coordinator for the town talk events.
Well, my approach to it is if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The event seems not to be broken, we should continue doing what we've been doing.
Okay, so, okay, we'll discuss that. So there was a motion to approve the mass gathering permit for Town Talk newspaper for the Spring Super Sunday, dated Sunday, April 17th, 2016, with the addition of 2 police officers.
The cost of which will be borne by
The applicant.
Okay. A motion's been made. Is there a second on the motion?
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the mass gathering permit application for the Spring Super Sunday, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the mass gathering permit for Town Talk newspapers media arts and craft show, which will be Sunday, June 12, 2016, times from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. I make a motion we approve the mass gathering permit, again with adding the requirement of 2 police officers being borne by the applicant, or cost being borne by the applicant.
Motion's been made and it has been seconded. All those in favor, is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the mass gathering permit application for the Media Art and Craft Show this June, please say aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
Next on the agenda, and this is, I guess, really ratifying that we were requested by the restaurant owners to provide a letter of approval with regards to their liquor control board applications for dining under the stars. This was reviewed, discussed, and approved at our workshop meeting, so I guess I'd be ratifying the approval or the request of the restaurants for the borough to provide a letter to the liquor control board with regards to outside dining for dining under the stars.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, I want to make sure I understand this. So we are going to provide this letter, right? That's what we're voting on?
It's already been done. Council authorized it at a workshop. It was sent in, so essentially you're ratifying what the sense of council was at workshop.
Because of the time and because they wanted to submit it before this meeting.
Okay, thank you. The second stands.
All right, any other call for discussion on a motion to approve what we've already done? But sometimes we have to engage in fiction here. I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving or ratifying, I apologize, the sending of a letter on behalf of the restaurant owners and to the LCB, please say aye.
Yes.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
Next on the agenda is the mass gathering permit for the Media Business Authority's Dining Under the Stars. I had requested that this be tabled to the next month's meeting, but the President and Council wished that it be brought up. I still would feel that there are several areas that this application needs to be discussed and reviewed. Some of the areas that I just want to, I think is important that we all are aware is there was a meeting in which restaurant owners were represented, the MBA was represented, and one of the areas that were discussed was the requirements or the request of insurance, liability insurance and liquor liability insurance. The individual, and I can't say he's speaking on behalf of all the restaurants, but he was there representing the restaurants, made a statement saying that it was that the restaurants were privileged to be able to come out and that he would see no issue with the restaurants obtaining a rider onto their existing outside dining insurance due to the fact that anybody who currently has even 1 or 2 tables out on State Street, it's what they call a cafe license, meaning that it's extended outside of their building. At least in discussion with this restaurateur, he felt that there would be no issue with obtaining this additional insurance. I think it's important for the borough to take a serious look and make sure that we find every way possible that we can be held or not be held liable whenever possible if there's any situations. Many people have said, nothing's happened, don't worry about it. I'm one of these individuals that say that I think it's still our fiduciary responsibility to try to look out for what is in the best interest of the residents. Right now, all the insurance is borne on us, coming out of our general fund, and it's something I think that should be looked at. I think there's still areas that I have questions with regards to the requirements of the LCB, their locations of where the restaurants are permitted to have their tables. I think there's also areas of concern with regards to BYOBs. In conversations with some restaurateurs, and I have not had the opportunity to look into it, I'm not sure if the solicitor would have had the time even if I asked him, is that there are requirements even for BYOBs with regards to the Liquor Control Board. And these are areas that I'm not sure that we have explored, and I was hoping to have the opportunity to have more time with that. There was also some areas with the application that last year we required to have an events coordinator for the event, and our ordinance does require that the events coordinator is not one that's connected with the event itself. I don't see that in the application this year. I'm not sure if that is going to be a requirement or not. Such things, the application is also requesting a setup time in which they did reference that the streets would not be closed till 5 o'clock, but then there would be voluntary no parking at 4 o'clock, and I'm not really sure how that would be defined. That you could be on the street until 5 o'clock and then it's closed. That I'm not really sure. So there's several areas that I do have questions, but the president asked that it be brought up tonight, and so it is. So I guess I'll have to make a motion to approve the mass gathering permit for Dining Under the Stars, starting in every Wednesday, May and through September. So I'm assuming the first Wednesday of May through the last Wednesday of September, starting at 5 o'clock, and event stop time is 11 o'clock. They make no reference to the final breakdown of the event. That's in the form of a motion.
We have a motion. Is there a second on the motion?
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Yes. We had talked about a volunteer system, and are we still on board with that? As far as an event coordinator, we have a separate outside coordinator. If you're fairly certain that we will have 5 volunteers or staff, and I think it's the presence. It's the presence of them with T-shirts, yellow T-shirts, green T-shirts, whatever, that really helps. I understand that we may expect more than the usual amount that we've had the last couple of years. We had an average of somewhere between 3,000 and 5,000, and you were at the table the other day when there was comments that this could go as much as 7,000 per night diners. So I think the volunteer staff, whatever you want to call them, is essential to work along with the police. And I'm satisfied with the staff of the NBA being the coordinators if we are going to have an organized group of volunteers against staff there.
Yes, the NBA is committed to having 5 individuals, whether they're volunteers, paid individuals, staff, or board members. But we'll make sure that we have 5 individuals there for each Dining Under the Stars.
And are you willing to bear the cost of the 2 police officers for each event?
Yes.
One other question while you're standing there. This is like a cross-examination. This is Mr. Messick. I do have a document here. I do have a document here. It's not signed by anybody, but it appears to be coming from the business authority saying, in essence, that if you don't meet these requirements, the NBA shall be fined no less than $100, no more than $1,000.
I'm not aware of that document, but...
That didn't come from me, because it's...
It didn't come from me.
Well, it didn't come from me either.
Right.
So, I mean, we leave it up to the council's discretion. But I can also, Councilman Robertson, we talked to a lot of the business owners, and a lot of the restaurants that do have outdoor seating on a regular basis, that have, those tables out within 3 feet of their business, their riders do cover them automatically for the outside seating, and will cover them automatically for the dining on their stars. So all the restaurants that do have outdoor dining do have the riders included. It's the restaurants that don't have that outside seating on a regular basis that, that may need to seek an additional rider.
Mr. Messick, would you be willing to make as a part of this mass gathering permit a requirement that all that participate have to have some sort of proof of that insurance?
We didn't. We made it a recommendation in the application at this point, simply because we don't know what the additional cost will be for those restaurants that don't have that rider already included, and we didn't want to price anyone out due to that rider. I personally haven't had the research or know for a fact that what the cost would be for that. So we do support it, and we do want to make it a recommendation this year. Once we have more research, we may make it a requirement for next year, but we didn't want to hamstring any restaurants that don't have it already.
Would you be willing to make it a requirement and to let us waive as necessary? Because I'll be very candid. I mean, one of the issues that I've had as being chair of public safety is you make commitments in February and don't keep those commitments in May, June, July, August, and September with zero ramifications. So you sit there and say, yep, we're not going to close down State Street until 5 o'clock, and then I come there at 4:15 and it's closed down. Or, yep, we're not going to make sure that we close up the sidewalks, and the sidewalks have 8,000 tables on them that you can barely get through. And then we have no ability to do anything. So I would rather sit there and say, make it a requirement and let us waive it. Because right now it's easy for a restaurant to go, yeah, I called, can't do it, and then the insurance is our responsibility.
That's true, and making it a recommendation this year will let them know that, personally, my opinion would be to make it a recommendation this year, make them know that it's on the table, and they know that they have, 365 days to get their act together, change insurance, whatever they need to do to make sure that this happens for the 2017 act.
And I'll sit there and say, representing the residents of the borough, I'm going to say I'm going to request the opposite, because I don't think it takes 60, 90 days, to get a rider onto an existing insurance policy. We rent out our community center on a regular basis to people who have to go get a rider on their homeowner's insurance to rent the spot, and they do it in a matter of days. So, I mean, I do understand that I'm not trying to stifle somebody, but I'd rather have someone come to us and say, I've gone up and down as much as I can, and my insurance company can't do it, and then us waive it versus, I got a whole other year to worry about it.
All right, well, there's been a fair amount of discussion. I don't need to shut off anyone else who wishes to comment on this mass gathering permit. Does anyone else wish to comment on the motion before I call the question?
May I ask the solicitor a question, Mr. President?
Of course.
What is our exposure for any restaurant for us, if a restaurant doesn't have this particular right?
Well, the borough has sovereign immunity from most torts, with the exception of those that are specifically listed in the Torts Claim Act. And those torts that are relevant here are generally relating to the sidewalks and the street. So it's all about slip and falls. I mean, liquor liability is not something the borough has. If there's a claim about if somebody hasn't been served too much, the borough could get sued, but ultimately we're going to be immune from that claim.
And what protection then would this rider give us that we don't already have?
It depends on what the rider is. If the rider is a premises liability rider, then, well, let me back up. The property owners and or the tenants, depending on their lease, have the primary responsibility for the sidewalks. The borough has secondary liability. So if there is no insurance there, then the borough is definitely exposed. If there is insurance, the borough's going to hook for a deductible, and any excess if the coverage is inadequate. For the streets, the borough is the primary party. The streets, and when you think about it, the streets, the property owners aren't capable of repaving the streets. It's something that the borough has to do. It's the borough's property and responsibility. If these riders are covering premises liability in the street, then there's an additional layer of protection there.
That's the biggest thing which I'm looking for. Peter, I fully agree that, in this day and age, anybody who's going to sue, they're going to see a municipality and they're going to, put that on the suit. I'm just looking that I'm hoping that if something like this is to occur, that at least our solicitor has the ability to come in and say, you have to go after the restaurant first. I mean, what we're doing in this situation, which I've asked council to recognize, is we're providing somewhere between 400, 600, 800 additional square feet to these restaurants. They readily, admit that these restaurants, are bringing in, last year in conversation with Brian, it was heading on $2 million of gross revenue that was generated. I think it's fantastic, but I don't think that the insurances should be coming out of the general fund. The same way as looking at the application, I mean, the business authority is making, a significant amount of this. So the only thing I'm saying is I think, they need to have some skin in the game. And right now, neither the business authority, because they have zero insurance, all their insurance falls under us, which I have questioned with that separation of the authority and the borough, that they should be looking at their own, as well as the fact that the restaurants should have some skin in the game.
So, Mr.
So-
Go ahead.
Sorry. So I'm wondering about, for the amount of years we've had with dining on the stars, how often have we?
We haven't.
We haven't had
We
any
haven't.
at all?
No.
We have not.
No.
Zero. So one might say that this is a solution in search of a problem. I'll just offer a few comments here, and I apologize, Mr. Messick, you get to stand there and listen to us just kind of confabulate for hours and hours, it seems sometimes. One thing that I asked that this be put on the agenda tonight because I am aware that you have a May start date. And this is a very complicated event. This is not something you kind of pick up at the last minute and you go. And this is something that requires a great deal of preparation. And in some ways, it seems tonight that there might be some who wish to place even more work in your way. I'd like to, we should remind ourselves that this is an MBA event, and the MBA is 14 volunteers. These are folks who take up their own time. They don't get paid for this in order to put on an event that is one of our signature events.
It is.
It is. I think that my approach toward this event has always been that it should be a partnership. We should work in partnership with you so that we can improve the event. And I think over the past number of years, when there have issues have arisen, the MBA has demonstrated a willingness to change things up when they're needed, to work with us so that the event gets better. I tend to agree with Councilwoman Dixon that in light of the history of 9 years of no claims, that I'm unsure why it is we're doing this, especially when if I were one of the restaurants, I might say, why is it that I'm doing this for this event when we have multiple other events that occupy the street that don't require anything like this? I think that this is a potentially dangerous road that we're walking down, and I don't favor looking to, I guess, bottom line here is that we have insurance. And this is why we have insurance, to take care of ourselves in situations like this. I think that this thing making things more complicated needlessly. So unless there's any more...
Yeah, there is, because I think you've made some comments that I think is important that I respond to. Number one, 2 minutes ago, you referenced the idea of events coordinators. Well, we've had them, why do we want to change it? Well, we've had one for the business authority, and now you're saying we don't need one. Town Talk has always provided a liability.
I don't think that I've said that, but go ahead.
That's the way I interpreted it, Mr. President. Then you reference, liability insurance. The overwhelming majority of events that occur in the borough are MBA functions. So we're covering them, but 2 of the applications tonight are from Town Talk, and they do provide us, and have provided us for, I don't want to say decades, but as long as I can remember, a rider and insurance for their events. So it's not something that's uncommon, and I get somewhat frustrated for the fact of just because something hasn't happened, we should just wait until it does and go, yeah, you know what, maybe we should have done something about that. I think to make the comment of, well, nothing's happened in the past, so nothing's going to happen in the future, I don't think is a very, very good remark to be made from us as the elected officials. Only thing I'm looking to do here is we need to recognize there is a difference. This is an authority. They are a separate arm of local government. And there should be some responsibility on them. And your comment of making it sound like there's 14 volunteers, they have 3 paid employees. So it's not 14 volunteers that are making the entire event run. So, I think there is some need for some clarification.
The board is entirely comprised of volunteers, as I understand it.
Right.
Okay, so unless there's anybody else who wishes to make a comment, I think that we spent a fair amount of time on it.
It's still it is a signature event for media. I know there are some places, Westchester's one that said, we're trying to get to where media is when it comes to Dining Under the Stars. I'm not a person who's there every Wednesday, but there are people who come in from outside of the area to the event. And when you think of the size of the event every Wednesday, then you need to say, okay, they're doing something right, a lot of things right.
I'm not saying they're not doing anything right, Sarah.
Okay, all right.
I mean, you have to understand what the idea behind the rationale
Is there any more discussion on this?
If we did take a tiny bit more time to look into the insurance riders for the people that don't already have these cafe licenses, whatever, would that adversely affect the Dining Under the Stars event if we wait, say, 2 more weeks and approve it at the workshop?
I mean, we would like to get we would like to start getting the applications out to the restaurants and start moving forward with that. But I leave it up to the discretion of the council. If you feel you need some more time.
Let me ask it a slightly different way. You signaled to us that you'd be willing to investigate this for purposes of next year. I imagine that if there was some type of discussion from now until the start of the event, and if we reach some type of an agreement that the NBA would be willing to have that type of discussion.
I mean, and don't get us wrong.
Just so long as the preparations for the event can continue to go forward.
Sure, yeah, and we will be, this is a strong recommendation from the NBA to our restaurateurs to get this. I mean, we're not going to say, you have a year, this is a recommendation to move forward with it. If you can get it for this year, great. We just don't want to put it in the mass gathering permit where it would exclude anyone. The possibility of excluding anyone if they can't get it together.
Okay.
Brian, can I ask you, do you have separate applications that you require of your restaurants to be part of the program?
We send out, I think we have 26, so everyone gets a separate application, and, the restaurants have been very proactive. All our liquor licenses are in order and have been posted, so that is one check mark that we, made sure that we got done this year, and it's going to be in the application that we strongly recommend that you have insurance for the 2016 season. And like I said, most of the larger ones that have the outside seating will. So we're talking, a handful to a dozen restaurants that may not have that rider already included in their policy.
And Brian, I do want to make it clear, because I did attend the meeting with the restaurants, and anyone who attended that meeting, at no time did I ever reference the idea that we weren't going to provide the mass gathering permit. I just said there was, as I always say, it's the devil's in the details. And too often we pass the mass gathering permit and then forget about the details.
Do we have a motion?
I was in the middle of a sentence, and I don't think it's really appropriate to be.
I think that we've been at this for about 15 minutes. Can we have a motion?
There is one on the floor.
I withdraw my motion.
Did you say you withdraw?
Yes.
All right. Does anyone else wish to make a motion in Mr. Robinson's stead?
No, I didn't. I seconded it so I could read. Where is it?
It's number 11.
I move that the mass gathering permit application for Media Business Authority's Dining Under the Stars every Wednesday, May through September 2016, 5 p.m. to 11 p.m.
Is that with 2 police officers and 5 volunteers?
Yes, including And the volunteers
Or
must
staff.
be visible, meaning something like a t-shirt.
All right, there's a motion. Is there a second on the motion? There is a second. We've had discussion on the motion, so I'll call the question. All those in favor of approving the mass gathering permit for the, I think it's the 9th annual Dining of the Stars, do I have it right? 9th annual? Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay.
Nay.
The motion passes.
Next on the agenda is a mass gathering permit for dining, or excuse me, for the 8th annual.
No, it's the veterans.
I just lost my agenda. Mass gathering for the, well, we did the dining of the stars. The next one is the mass gathering permit for Veterans Legacy Memorial Parade, Monday, May 30th, 9 a.m. to noon. Well, that's in form of a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the mass gathering permit for the Veterans Legacy Memorial Day Parade, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
And last on the agenda is mass gathering permit application for the 16th annual State Street Blues Stroll, Saturday, June 11th, 2016, 7 p.m. to 2 a.m.
Is there a second?
Second.
There is. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving a mass gathering permit for the 2016 Blue Stroll, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
That concludes my report. Other than I would appreciate moving forward that if I am in the middle of a sentence, that you at least have the courtesy to let me complete my sentence. I know that for some reason, certain things you like to run through very quickly. I don't think 15 minutes of a legislative meeting is too much time for something that's this important. So I'm very disappointed in the way in which you cut things off.
Noted. I think that we spent enough time on that. All right, any questions for Vice President Robinson? Hearing none, we move into my portion of the agenda, Community Development, Personnel, and Media Arts Council. Item number one and item number 2 are related. They both involve a project which is known as the West End Walk. It's one of 2 projects that promise to transform the west end of our town. The West End Flats is an apartment building that will be on the south side of Baltimore Avenue, near to where Baltimore Avenue joins State Street. And the West End Flats is a development of 25 townhomes that will be located on the north side. We have a representative of the engineering firm, an architectural firm that has been working on the project. Adam, thank you for being here. And we also have a representative from the organization, Arcadia Land Development, Jason Duckworth, who has been with us probably far too often for his taste over the past year. The first item relates to the number of stories that will be permitted in the townhomes. At present, under our ordinance, 3 stories are permitted. And the developer is looking to have 4 stories as opposed to 3 stories. The important thing to keep in mind here is that this will not increase the height of the building. The height of the building will remain the same. It's just what's inside of the building that we're talking about, not the outside of the building. So they have asked us to change our gateway ordinance to permit 4 stories within the buildings, as opposed to 3, without increasing the height of the building itself. We've talked among ourselves, and we've discussed this, and I'm prepared tonight to make a motion to authorize our solicitor to draft and advertise an ordinance that will allow an additional story to townhomes in the Gateway Area 1 district.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? For clarity, what is the height limit?
40 feet.
40 feet. So the building will be 40 feet, and what's done inside of it is from...
Yeah, I believe the height is 35. Adam, want to get the mic?
Ladies and gentlemen, that's the backside of Adam Powell.
Yes, I apologize. The allowable height is 45 feet for the Gateway District. And what we're basically proposing to do is to, instead of having an attic space, the attic space would be finished. So the image there as shown would basically remain the same, except the dormers would actually function. So instead of just having the fake dormer into an attic space, it would be finished off as a loft or something for the master bedroom above.
And Mr. Powell, what is the height of the building that is being proposed?
I believe right now they're all under 45 feet, so they range between like 42 and 43, depending on how the peak works.
Right, okay, got you. Thank you very much.
There's been a motion and discussion. All those in favor of amending the ordinance for... Did we already do that advertising? All right. Authorizing our solicitor to draft and advertise the ordinance relating to the allowance of, I don't know if the reference of additional story, but additional story to the townhouses in the R&D 1 overlay district. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it.
The second of the two related motions concerning West End Walk is approval of the final subdivision and land development application. So this has come before Planning Commission, and the recommendation there was unanimous that we do approve the final development. Just a little bit of context here. On complicated projects, and this certainly qualifies as a complicated project, we do preliminary and final land development in 2 stages. The preliminary development is where most of the heavy lifting is done. Final land development is essentially we compare the final plans with what was approved to make sure that it is accurate and that what was proposed is going to get built. And the Planning Commission takes a look at the final plans with an eye towards that, and then we then vote. We may impose conditions at the final land development phase, and there are some here. Mr. Scott, I don't have a copy of the resolution. I understand that you might. If you wouldn't mind summarizing them for us, please.
As you mentioned, most of the heavy lifting has to be done in the preliminary stage. So the first thing this does is incorporates all the conditions from the preliminary approval. It also requires that they comply with all of the engineer's comments from the engineer's last review letter. Similarly, comply with the town planning consultant's review comments. And the one that's most relevant there is the monuments that they will be adding. They have not finalized that, and that's something that they'll have to get the borough's approval through common committee for the final design. There's a requirement that they enter into a maintenance agreement with the borough so that they're taking on, so that ultimately the homeowners association will be taking on the maintenance responsibilities for the stormwater and improvements that get built as part of this project. A few little changes requested to the landscaping plan. There is a list of building materials that they are agreeing to use, which is attached to an exhibit. So, you have pretty drawings. You want to see that this is what's built, not something that kind of has that skeleton but looks really different. So they've agreed to certain building materials so that you get what you see. Those are the major ones.
I seem to recall there also was an agreement that the borough would have final approval of trees and foundational plantings.
That is, by way of the landscape plan, there's a note on there saying that if they change any that are on the current plan, they need to get borough approval.
Okay.
So they've proposed a set of plans, which you're approving tonight. If they deviate from that, they'll need your approval.
Okay. All right, I'm prepared. I make the motion that we approve the final subdivision and land development application for West End Walk, subject to the conditions that our solicitor has outlined for us.
I'll second that motion. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of passing resolution 2016-14 as referenced by our solicitor for the final subdivision land development application for West End Walk, 621 to 625 West State Street. All those in favor saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Ayes have it. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just a quick question. I'm sure that the folks at home, the one or two who are tuning in, Jason, they might be wondering, do you have a timeline for beginning the project?
Sure. We hope to begin in May.
Okay, May of this year.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And when are you going to be done?
I would anticipate that from start to finish, it will be a 2-year process.
Okay.
But we'll get started with the entrance off of Baltimore Avenue, so the off-site connections for utilities and the road are essential to begin. And then the model home will be the unit you see there on the right with the gambrel roof. We already have folks who found us to express their interest, so we're looking forward to it and we're optimistic about its success.
Excellent.
Sold something?
No, not at this point. Not at this point. But
I think we can start to lay bets and they'll all be sold before you're finished.
well, thank you. I certainly hope so.
Thank you very much.
Great.
All right. Thank you very much. I'll proceed with my agenda. A couple more items. It might be 3. It might be 2. We'll see how it works out. Item number 3 involves the proposed Wawa at Providence Road and Baltimore Avenue. This is a settlement agreement with regard to traffic improvements. We have the attorney here for Wawa, Mr. Sullivan. Thank you for being here. I'll give a little bit of context to this, and I hope that I can do this accurately. If not, Mr. Sullivan or Mr. Scott, when he returns, will explain how it is that I got things wrong. So back in April, I think either April or May of last year, 2015, the borough approved the final land development for the Wawa project. There were a couple of conditions that were there were 30 some odd conditions, but one of the conditions was that the applicant would seek to install 2 left-hand turn lanes on the southbound lanes of Providence Road onto Baltimore Avenue. And the borough, at its discretion, could elect for a contribution of $290,000 towards other road projects. And that was the rationale for that from our solicitor was that if, for whatever reason, the 2 left-hand turn lanes could not be done, that we would get the $290,000. And the reason why that was important is because Providence Road is a state road, and any changes made to that road must be approved by PennDOT, and we don't control what PennDOT is going to do. After we reached that resolution, application was made to PennDOT with regard to a highway occupancy permit. I don't know that, I'm fully aware why this was, but there's some confusion. The application was for a single turn lane, not 2 turn lanes. After the borough learned of this, we challenged, and PennDOT agreed to that. After we learned that PennDOT agreed to that, the borough challenged that. We went back to PennDOT just to explain to them that the agreement was for 2 left-hand turn lanes. And that turned out to be a productive meeting. I think there were good conversations from that. PennDOT, as I understand it, was very excited at the prospect of 2 left-hand turn lanes there. They think that that will be an excellent solution to a challenging traffic problem. This would not be real life if things didn't get a little more complicated than that. And the complication was that if there's changes made to Providence Road north of Baltimore Avenue, PennDOT believed that changes be made south of Baltimore Avenue so that the lanes lined up. And so there was a question about who was going to bear the costs of all that. And the settlement agreement that we have today really addresses that. I'd suggest that the theme here is that all roads lead to Baker Street, and I'll explain why. So under the agreement, there are certain time limits in which things need to be done. The work that is to be done on Providence Road north of Baltimore Avenue, the cost of that will be borne entirely by the applicant, Media Real Estate. As to the work that is to be done south of Baltimore Avenue, the agreement is roughly that the borough and Media Real Estate will go half and half. but that the borough's payments will not exceed $90,000. And that $90,000 would take the form of a rent abatement. The rent is payment for the use of Baker Street. That's my comment, that all roads lead to Baker Street. That's where the $90,000 would be, that the borough's portion would be come from that rent. So tonight, then all that has been memorialized, and of course it's a 4-page document because that's just the way the lawyers work. And we've worked on that over the past couple of months. And Mr. Scott, when we last met 2 weeks ago, we had some issues that were raised, or questions that were raised, and we asked you to see if you could address those issues and smooth them over. Are you satisfied that the document we have before us tonight does those things?
Yes.
Okay. With that in mind, I will move that that the borough approve or enter into the settlement agreement for traffic improvements with regard to the Wawa project, and more specifically the changes to the intersection at Providence Road and Baltimore Avenue.
Second.
Motion was made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? I would like to say that I think that we did not do our fiduciary responsibility with regards to this agreement. The original stipulation was that the applicant, Wawa or Media Real Estate, would be responsible for changes to the 2 northbound lanes of 252. We're now being subject to paying a significant amount of money for modifications on the southbound side per PennDOT. But the bottom line is you can't do the northbound without the southbound, and I firmly believe that the applicant should be held responsible for all of it. But as very often seen in the last several years, that $100,000 here, $1 million there isn't that significant, so we just will bear those costs. This is a project that I think should be completely borne by the applicant, and somehow we, the residents of the Borough Media, are going to be held responsible for paying close to $100,000.
I'll just make a couple of...
I'm calling a motion.
I'll make a couple of brief comments. The agreement was not northbound lanes. It was the initial agreement back in April or May specified changes to Providence Road north of Baltimore Avenue, and that's why it is that we have this issue now, what to deal with changes south of Baltimore Avenue. And I think that it's mistaken to suggest that this council has somehow failed its fiduciary responsibility. Certainly we can all disagree on things, many things, and I expect that that's so, because we're 7 different persons and we don't always see eye to eye. I credit everyone on this council with bringing to their thought process the best interests of the borough. It's just that we don't see things the same way. One way of looking at this is for one of the most challenging intersections in the borough, that of Providence Road and Baltimore Avenue. If we were to try to accomplish this change on our own and have to pay prevailing wages, it would cost us nearly $1 million, about $900,000. Instead, in the form of rent abatement, it's costing us $90,000. And that to me is a good bargain. We're paying 1/10 of what it will cost us if we were to do this out of our own pocket. And I think that's a good bargain for the borough.
I think zero is better than $100,000. But call the motion. All those in favor of approving the agreement for the settlement agreement for the traffic improvements for the location defined here as Wawa. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Nay. Ayes have it.
All right. So item number 4. I don't know that we need a motion, and this is with regard to a request for a windshield enclosure at 320 Market Cafe. A windshield enclosure. You might have seen them elsewhere. I think there might be an example in town here. It's oftentimes heavy fabric with heavy plastic that is put on top in front of a doorway provide some protection from the elements during inclement weather. And 320 Market Cafe requested, they asked the borough if it would be interested in entering into a license to permit it to have that enclosure, because that enclosure actually would occupy part of our sidewalk. And so in order to do that, they would need to have a license or an agreement from the borough to do that. I mean, discussions that we've had at the CDC as well as at council, my sense is that council is not inclined to enter into such a license agreement. So the way I'll put it today is that unless someone wishes to make a motion here tonight to enter into such a license agreement, I'll ask the borough manager, Mr. Smith, to advise the 320 Market Cafe that we are not inclined to enter into such an agreement.
Okay, and is there anyone who wishes to make a motion to approve the windshield enclosure? Hearing none, I guess we'll advise this manager to correspond to 320 Cafe.
All right, item number 5, never a happy event when somebody resigns from a position of the borough, though this is a part-time position. A short while ago, a couple of months ago, if I recall correctly, we hired a gentleman to serve as part-time facilities maintenance worker. This is the person who comes around every night to make sure that the buildings are closed, that everything is safe. It's one of those jobs that you don't see people doing this job, but it needs to be done. The fellow that we hired, fortunately, I guess, he's had a fortunate event. He and his wife, they have a baby, and because of that changed circumstance, he's unable to continue in this part-time position, and so he's resigned from that part-time position. So it is my duty to move that we accept the resignation of Mike Green as part-time facilities maintenance worker.
Second.
It's a motion made and seconded to accept the resignation of Mike Green as part-time facilities manager. Is there any discussion with regards to the motion? All those in favor of accepting the resignation of Mike Green as part-time facilities manager, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, ayes have it.
And Mr. Smith, I understand that we have resumes from others who applied. Can we also post on the borough website, at least for the next week or so, that there is such a position open, and if anybody is interested in that position, they may apply. We'll try to get that filled as soon as possible. All right, thank you. Just a couple of announcements, both involve the Media Arts Council. First, not so much announcement, but congratulations to them. I know that some of us were there, but this past weekend, in the very, very brutally cold weather that we had, there was a wonderful turnout at the Media Arts Council gallery site, which is at the foot of State Street, right where State Street meets with Baltimore Avenue. And they had, I think the first time that they've had this, they had a mosaic show. So it was really a wonderful display of mosaic artistry, and you'd really be surprised at what people do with stones. And it's still there, so if you're interested, walk on down and take a look. So the other item is the Media Arts Council Annual Film Festival. It is coming upon us very, very soon, April 1st, April 2nd. That's the first Friday and the first Saturday in April at the Media Theater. So put it on your calendar and buy your tickets. It's always a wonderful event. That concludes my agenda.
Any questions for President Council or President Hall? Hearing none, gavel down.
We'll move on to Finance and Library. Councilman Williamson.
I should be brief. Just a couple things. The first is a motion that we pay our bills as we do each month. This month we have checks drawn on the general fund of $255,095.36, on the recreation fund of $3,165.02, and on the capital fund of $15,366.75. I move that we approve these checks.
Second.
Motion made and seconded that the borough pay its bills for the month of January 2016 from the general recreation and capital funds as specified by Councilman Williamson. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
The second thing is the Finance Committee did meet on Tuesday, and it's still very early in the year, so it's hard to know how the budget's going to turn out in the end, but so far it's going well. Our expenses are lower than expected, and our revenues are greater than expected. So as far as the budget goes, you can't do much better than that. And I will certainly report more and in more detail as the year goes on. I do have another resolution for us to pass, and that is for us to increase our fees for tax certifications. They're currently $10, which is below market in the county, and we'd like to move to somewhere in the middle of the market at $25 for every tax certification. There's a resolution in your packet to that effect. I ask that you please make that in form of a motion that we pass it.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving Resolution 2016-15, which would increase our tax certification fee from a below market rate of $10 to a reasonable market rate of $25, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
Last, in form of an announcement, is I am the liaison to the library, and I would direct everyone's attention who may be listening to the detailed list of events. There are many at the library. Simply by going to mediauplibrary.org, there's a clear events section where you'll see what's happening. Thank you. That concludes my report.
All right, are there questions for Councilman Williams? Hearing none, we'll move on to Councilwoman Amy Johnson. She's Fair Trade Farmers Market, Shade Tree, and Environmental Advisory Council.
Thank you. Under Shade Tree, we have quite a lot of work to be done with trimming, stump removal, tree removal. So I'd like to make a motion to authorize advertisement of RFP for tree trimming, removal, and stump removal services.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of authorizing advertisement of a request for proposals for tree trimming and stump removal services, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
Thank you. Under EAC, I'd like to, resolution number 2016-16 for the reappointment of Brendan O'Riordan to the Environmental Advisory Council, which is a 3-year term. I make that in form of a motion.
Second.
The motion has been seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Mr. Smith, you're hearing none. I have a question for Mr. Smith.
Sure.
So when does that 3-year term expire? Will it be December of 2018?
Correct.
All right. We have a motion made and seconded. All those in favor of Resolution 2016-16, reappointing Brendan O'Riordan to the Environmental Advisory Council for a 3-year term that will end the final date of December 2018, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, please say nay. The motion passes.
Thank you. Under Fair Trade, just an announcement that the Fair Trade Committee is starting evening meetings. They've been hosting morning meetings up until now. Their first evening meeting will be next Thursday, the 25th, from 7 to 8 p.m., held at the Bittersweet Cafe. And they're going to hold a Fair Trade 101 for the public. So if you're interested, that is next Thursday, the 25th, at Bittersweet. And for Media Farmers Market, you can mark your calendars. The beginning of the market for 2016 will be Thursday, May 12th. The committee is always looking for volunteers, as it is an all-about volunteer organization. They're looking for volunteers for children's activities, the fundraising committee, at the market manager table during the hours of the market. Their next meeting is Monday, March 14th. If you're interested and want to find out more information on how to be a volunteer, you can email manager@mediafarmersmarket. You can also go to their website for more information. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there questions for Councilwoman Amy Johnson? Hearing none, we move into Public Relations and Historical Archives. Councilwoman Dixon.
Have nothing to report.
Well, thank you very much. Any questions for Councilwoman Dixon? Hearing none, we move into the bookend public comment and privilege of the floor. If there's anyone who wishes to address council at this time, please come forward, state your name and address. Mr. Smith, are we sure we paid our bills?
Too late to be done.
Turn it on too late. Apologize.
That's okay.
Letitia Jones, 216 North Monroe Street. My couple of questions as the meeting went along. You had a number 3 on Mr. Robinson's agenda, a resolution of declaring a state of emergency so that you could request state aid. My question is that contingent on having a budget? Can we do that without a budget in Harrisburg?
I'm not Governor Wolf, but we can still submit, an application for state aid. When we will get reimbursed, that's a different question. So we have to follow protocol and submit our application, but you're absolutely right. When we get paid, your guess is as good as mine.
Okay, and the second question I have is the LEDs that you're looking into, would that do anything for light pollution in the borough?
From what I understand, and it is somewhat limited, that it would actually be, it could reduce light pollution due to the fact that we can change the density, the brightness of these LEDs because as I referenced, the lights come in blocks of like 4 blocks make up a light. So if you're in an area where you don't want as much, or you can actually pop one of the blocks out, or 2 of the blocks out, or 3 of the blocks out. So, and it is a different light. I've seen them at conferences. I don't think they're as nasty. They are brighter in some ways, but they're not as nasty as the sodium lights that we're currently using.
Okay, and my third and last question is, you talked a lot about insurance and other stuff on the mass gathering under Dining Under the Stars, but is there any, I know I've seen small kids who might be introduced to a food for the first time, and lots of people, and I know that food allergies are becoming more and more common, and India has a huge variety of cuisines and restaurants serving different things that people could be. Is there some sort of training for either the officers on duty or the volunteers or anyone at the firehouse or any of the staff about EpiPens and food allergy?
I mean,
Like basic first aid?
I will attempt to answer this. I will sit there and say unequivocally our EMSs are well trained, and I'm probably comfortable in saying that a portion of our firefighters are trained in something like this. With regards to wait staff or employees of the restaurants, you would have to ask the restaurants,
And there is the parent or whoever the caregiver is, they would know and carry and have, and even the child would have their EpiPen. So,
If they knew.
well, if they don't know, how are we? Okay. But I'm sure that it would be covered.
I know our EMS, we have an outstanding EMS unit, so I guarantee that they're trained. But as I'm sure I know our police officers are trained in first aid of some sort. It's part of their ongoing training. But getting as granular as if they're experts in knowing a peanut allergy, over an asparagus allergy, I'm not sure on that one. So.
All right, thank you, Ms. Javons. If I might drag somebody up to the microphone. Mr. Bach, I thought that at some point in the past few minutes you might have some information that you wanted to share with us. If you don't, that's fine. If you do, that's equally fine, but I'm giving you a chance.
I'll talk to you.
Okay, good. All right, unless there's anybody else who wishes to.
One quick comment,
at the
I
microphone.
made a promise to Mr. Davidson. I forgot to mention public stuff. Public stuff is a free app that you can get through either the Apple Store or the Google Store, or whatever it is. The app will sit there. If you see a crack in the sidewalk, a down limb, you can take a picture of it. It reflects its GPS, and you can send it to the borough, and you can report any type of issue. Got to keep doing that every month, or Mr. Davidson will shave my head.
All right. At this point, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned.